Hey, this is JC and welcome to Small Brick City. In this video, I've got something really special, a tiny modular building, which is 1/4 the size of an expert modular building. It measures 8 studs wide by 32 studs deep. Now let me tell you a bit about the history of the build and why I did it. So starting with the history, there are a couple of people who have built tiny modular buildings. TD Bricks, a great mock designer, he built one a few months ago and that was 8 studs wide and 32 studs deep. However, he didn't detail the inside because he said there was a lack of space. And you know, we have a saying in Small Brick City, there's no such thing as a lack of space. Okay, we don't really have that saying, but personally, I prefer to detail the inside of all my buildings and ensure they're functional for minifig use and minifig scale. The jackhammer, in response to TD Bricks, he built a tiny modular building which is only 4 studs wide and 32 studs deep. And this is obviously a torture building where he sends minifigs when they do something wrong. Obviously at that size, the interior was also not detailed. Mini-Me P Bricks, which I assume is in response to TD Bricks and the jackhammer because she linked their videos in her video, she built an amazing 6 stud wide building. This was a multi-story apartment, really tiny, but she furnished the interior completely. It's an amazing build and I do recommend you check out her video in the link in the card above or in the description below. The only thing is, because it's 6 studs wide, there's no way to put stairs in, so she built in modified plates with bars into the wall to form kind of a vertical step ladder up to each floor. Now my tiny modular building is not in response to their buildings, however, I always kept those builds at the back of my minds because I thought they're really cute and they might serve a functional purpose in future. And that time is now. I'm currently working on the Metro City section of Small Brick City, my custom Lego city. And I just completed my modifications for the corner garage, which is now the corner garage and the blue brick hotel. You can check out the video for my modifications in the card above or in the link below. In terms of a placement in Metro City, I've decided to place it next to the diner. Coincidentally, this is how Lego also photographed it for the back of the corner garage box. However, I feel there needs to be a buffer between the two buildings. For some reason, this curve here and this part of the corner garage just seem to be a bit too tight together, especially if you see it from maybe this angle over here. And I do have the hotel sign as well because mine is a hotel. And I just felt that there could be a buffer. In my Metro City section, in terms of a table layout, I also had 8 studs more on this side of the diner. So I felt a tiny modular building would fit very well to be placed in between these two expert modular buildings to be a buffer. And that's why I built my tiny modular building. And if I were to put this here and just slide this in, you can see what I'm talking about. With this little buffer, we get just enough space between the two builds. It creates some interest with another building in between, and this also allows me to fully utilize that extra 8 studs in an interesting way. Now that I've explained the why, let's check out my tiny modular building. The concept of this building is that it is a tiny bookstore and apartment, and it's run by a little old lady who used to have her bookshop in the uptown section of Small Brick City, but business was not very good, so she moved herself to Metro City. Metro City is understandably much more expensive, so rental is higher, therefore her place is quite small. What she doesn't realize is no one knows what a bookstore is anymore, and that's why business is down, not because of her location. But now let's have a look at the building itself. When I designed this tiny modular building, I wanted to have lots of texture for all 3 floors. I wanted each floor to look different, to look unique, but still come together to fit itself as one complete organic building. As the building is small, it allowed me to play with different textures because I didn't need to use so many bricks since it was quite small, and I could use the bricks I had for each floor to make them different. While the base of the building is white, there's a lot of texture in terms of horizontal lines in sand blue as well as gray. There's also maroon over here. And for the top floor, I went with this sand green. Now, they are all from the same color palette, so they complement each other, but it's also really distinct and it makes the building quite unique and visually pleasing. The front and back are similar in a sense. This is the main door. There's a letterbox over here, a sign over here, a door inside. There's a little canopy or awning. I also placed some inverted slope bricks over here to put some flowers in front of the windows. And if you look around the back, it is similar in a way, although in this case the door is off to the side. I've added a window, the little windowsill here. There's a little garden for the owner to do her gardening, and a bit of a backyard with some texture, and I'll show you the top view in just a bit. Other than that, the sides are very uniform and still pleasing to the eye, so it's not that plain. It still looks pretty interesting, but since this is a modular in between two buildings, it doesn't have to be too fancy. This 3D sign over here, that is something I've used before for my previous bookshop, and I really like this 3D book sign, so I've placed it here on a modified technique brick with a bar, and we have another bar and clip element over here, and that's what holds this 3D sign in place. I'm pretty happy with the roof design as well. It's something that it's new for me in terms of this design. As I've mentioned before, I always find roofs the most challenging to make interesting and to make different, but I think I succeeded in creating an interesting roof in this case over here. So let's have a look at each floor now, and you get a top-down view of the building as well, and the sidewalks and the backyard. Here's a look at the ground floor. This is a modular style building, so the levels can be separated. And the ground floor is the bookstore itself. Let's first have a look at the bookstore owner, a little more senior lady, and she's of course holding a book and just organizing the books that no one will buy. And the bookstore itself is pretty simple. Let's have a look inside. It is really narrow, but you can get an appreciation of the use of space and the details. We've got shelves of books on this side. There's a little flower pot, or just a pot of a single flower, and that really is the back of this letterbox over here. And over this side we have a set of stairs. To save space, I built one stud of the stairs into the side of the wall, and I've mentioned this technique before to save space, and this still gives enough space to pass the staircase and the bookshelf to get to the back door. On this side over here we've got some wall decorations, and we have some magazines in some racks. Other than that, it's pretty straightforward. Nothing much more, except that underneath the steps we do have an old style cash register and a jar of cookies, and you can see that from this side over here. That's the cash register, and that's the jar of cookies. The backyard is pretty simple. I use a combination of round tiles and square tiles to create a pattern, and this is her little garden. For the front decorated tiles I showed you earlier, and that signifies that this is a bookstore, and that's the door, and pretty much very simple in terms of a sidewalk, but basically that is the ground floor. Now let's go up the steps to the second floor. The second floor is the start of the bookshop owner's apartment, and this is the kitchen. You come up the stairs over here, and when you come around the side, there's a little kitchen counter with some cups. That's a lamp, and this is actually not a counter, but it's a fridge. And over here right in front we have a stove, an oven, as well as a tap, and some tiling for detail. Pretty simple. Again, not much space, but there's enough functional space for the minifig to go through, and still has space to cook as well as store food. Now let's go up to the third level up the stairs. Before we look inside the third floor, let's have a look at the outside of this top floor. And first we'll look at the front facade. That's the 3D sign I spoke about earlier. This uses a snot technique using modified bricks with studs on the front and some 1x2 tiles. The windows are large and they are set in using jumper plates, and they're set in by half a stud. And I shared how to build this set in windows in a video which you can check out in the link above or below. We come around the back. I didn't replicate the same snot techniques. For one reason, I didn't have enough modified bricks or sand green 1x2 tiles, so I decided to use these masonry bricks in dark tan, and I think the colors match very well and fits very well for the back of the building. The roof itself, pretty simple. Here is the design I did, and basically I use bracket pieces, and maybe if I can pop this off, you can have a look at that. Well, that's a modified plate, and these are basically brackets with a 2x4 bracket for each plate. And I put these 1x4 slope pieces, I put a slope tile piece, and I put these grill elements on either side to give just a bit of an ornate finish, and that's identical for the front and the back. And I think that's really simple in terms of the design, but very effective as well. The sides are just tiled and raised by one plate, and we've got an air conditioning unit right over here. The roof is modular as well, so I can pop that off. It's held in place by some jumper plates. And inside we see the bedroom and the toilet for the apartment. Now you come up the stairs, and over here we can see the design for the toilet. There is a toilet bowl, and there's a shower with taps and a shower head. Now there's no door, mainly because of space, and also remember, this is just an apartment for a single person, so no one really comes up, so you aren't really sharing the apartment with anyone, so there's no need for any doors. Sure, we might get the floors wet a bit when we shower, but that's fine. And I created these side walls using 2x2 panels in brown, and the fronts are basically just cone pieces to form a pillar. And that's a very small and effective toilet, but still manages to create space for a minifig to pass through to come into the bed, as well as the nightstand with a lamp over there, and that's by the window. And here's a look at the back of the tiny bookstore apartment when it's set next to the corner garage and the downtown diner. As you can see, the bookstore apartment does line up with the back of the downtown diner. I did build that deliberately, but I'm sure it can fit with most modular buildings as well. I haven't detailed or finished the back of the downtown diner. This tan base plate came unfinished with the set. All I did was I placed a payphone as well as a dumpster which came from the Persian restaurant, complete with the rat. I will finish this in some way so that it matches these two buildings as well. And you can see how the back of the corner garage and the bookstore actually work very well. I used the same kind of finish deliberately so that there's some kind of an organic flow, and I really like how this looks like. In my next Metro City update, which is coming out very soon, you'll see how this looks like when these buildings are set in Metro City. I hope you enjoyed this look at my tiny modular bookstore and apartment. I will be creating instructions for this in the near future, so if you're interested to build this, you will be able to replicate this tiny modular building for your own LEGO city. Let me know what you liked and didn't like about this build in the comments. I'm always open to feedback to improve my builds. If you ever visit Small Brick City, please patronize this small bookshop so that she can pay her rent. If you liked the video, please give it a thumbs up. And if you haven't, please subscribe to the channel. Thanks for watching. Talk to you soon.